Welcome, friends, to another edition of Bible Time. This is the Thursday edition, and I trust that you're having a good week of standing firm for the Lord. And I know that the last couple of days, as we've done our daily Bible reading through 2 Kings and looking at King Hezekiah, I trust that that's been a big encouragement. His example has encouraged you in standing firm for the Lord and in looking at the things that made up his life, how he held firmly onto the Lord, he trusted in the Lord, and seeing the great example of his prayer life. I know that has encouraged many of you in your own prayer life. It's provided a real model that can help you in your own prayer life. And I'm glad that we had those couple of days with good King Hezekiah. And like I said yesterday, if you go to Israel, you'll still see evidence of King Hezekiah's life and ministry there. You'll see a place called Hezekiah's Wall, a wall that he had built in Jerusalem during the time that he reigned there. You'll go through Hezekiah's tunnel. We talked about that. King Hezekiah had a great impact. And I'm glad we had those couple of days to talk about him, because in today's chapter, 2 Kings 21, well, it takes a turn for the worse. Here we read about his son Manasseh and grandson Amon. And Manasseh has the longest reign of any king in Judah, 55 years. And then Amon has one of the shortest, 2 years. But those 57 years are 57 years of evil. In fact, these two are like the epitome of evil. It says that they did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. That's how quickly it changed from Hezekiah and the good that he did to now the evil being done by his son and grandson. And this explains, again, as we remember why these books are written. These books are written during the time of the exile and giving them the history to explain to them how they got there. Why are they living in exile? And right here with Manasseh, you're going to see why Judah is going to follow Israel and head off into exile as well. Babylon's going to come and conquer Judah, and take them captive. When you see the things that Manasseh did, it doesn't just say he did evil. It tells us exactly what he did. He rebuilt the high places where the people worshipped idols. The things that his dad had torn down, he rebuilds. He built altars to other gods at the house of the Lord, at the temple of the Lord. He practiced pagan religion. He sacrificed his own children and promoted that practice amongst the people. It says that he got involved in witchcraft and divination. He was following every occultic pagan thing you could imagine. And he had a carved image of an Asherah put inside the temple, which is a complete abomination. I mean, and it says in verse 9 that what he did was worse than all the nations who lived there before God brought Israel into the land. That's how bad it was. That's how evil it was there in Judah during those times. And we're told that God sent his prophets to warn them. And he said that there's going to come a disaster upon Judah that's going to make the ears of the people who hear about it tingle. It's going to hurt their ears to hear what God's going to do to Judah. That's how serious it is. And God makes, in verses 13 and 14, you read it, he makes 3 I will statements. I will stretch over Jerusalem the measuring line of Samaria. Just like he judged Samaria justly, so he will Jerusalem as well. And I will wipe Jerusalem as one wipes a dish, wiping it and turning it upside down. It's going to be they're going to be completely wiped out, completely leveled. And verse 14, here's the most frightening thing. And I will forsake the remnant of my heritage and give them into the hand of their enemies. That's what God's going to do. And when he does it, it's going to be so devastating. It's going to make people's ears tingle just to hear about what happens. But that's because God is a holy God. God is a just God. God is going to deal with them because they didn't do what he said. He promised them blessing if they did what he said. They're not doing what he says. He sends the prophets to warn them and to call them back to what he had said. They're not listening to the prophets as well. And then after Manasseh dies, he doesn't get buried with the other kings. He gets buried in the garden of his own castle. And then his son Ammon takes over. Well, after 2 years, he gets assassinated. And then the people who assassinated him, they get killed. And Josiah is made the king twice there, right at the end of the chapter. It mentions Josiah. And that's the bright light to look at for the future. I mean, in between Hezekiah and Josiah were 57 years of evil. And it's interesting, too, just a little historical note. Verse 16 says that he shed innocent blood. And just by looking at some of the prophets who would have been around at that time and some of the things that they mentioned, it's not only the child sacrifices that he did, the shedding of innocent blood, but he oppressed the weak, took advantage of the weak within Jerusalem, and he killed prophets. In fact, it's believed that Manasseh had Isaiah put into a log and then sawn in half. That's how he killed Isaiah the prophet. And that's probably what's being referenced in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 37. And so that's how evil, how wicked it was. And it just shows you and me how quickly things can change. We can't presume upon anything regarding the future. We must be vigilant at all times and vigilant all the way to the end. Or things can turn around in one generation. Believers Fellowship could disappear off the face of the earth in one quick generation. And so let's us all learn from this lesson. Let us see how seriously God takes this, and let's us take it as seriously as well. And commit ourselves to being faithful to the Lord and following the example of Hezekiah that we saw over the last couple of days, and not his son or his grandson. And so I trust that you're being encouraged this week. I trust that you're enjoying fellowship with others within the church, and that we're building each other up, stimulating one another to love God and do good deeds for him. So we'll see you tomorrow, and we'll look at the next king, a good king, King Josiah, for when we come back tomorrow for more Bible time.